Hey there, 5-1 Youth, Pastor Jordan back for the fourth video in our Life Topic series, where we're looking at how to apply biblical wisdom to our everyday lives. This series will teach you how the Bible is relevant to you and how you can use Scripture to guide you in situations that you find yourself in regularly. Today's video is going to be a follow-up of our video from last week about dating, because today we're going to discuss not dating. We're going to look at what the Bible has to teach us about singleness. And this is a really important topic because the biblical teaching on singleness is countercultural. It is completely opposite from what you will hear from the world about singleness, because the world places a very high value on romantic relationships. In pretty much every form of media, whether it's books, movies, or television, almost every story has a romantic subplot where part of the happy ending is the characters coming together in marriage or in a romantic relationship. You know, the hero gets the girl in the end, or the prince and the princess get married and live happily ever after. And these stories have conditioned us to view marriage or a romantic relationship as part of a happy ending. And if we don't have that relationship, then maybe we are somehow incomplete or we're missing out. And not only this, people who are single are often portrayed as weird or outsiders or defective. And I often hear the word virgin used as an insult. And this is really sad because it's completely backwards from how the Bible wants us to view singleness. So if you're somebody who's just never been interested in dating, I hope you'll be encouraged by this video because it will show you how God has a special honor for those who pursue lives of singleness. Two of the most important people in the entire Bible, the Apostle Paul and Jesus himself, both lived lives of singleness. And not only were they single, they affirmed that singleness is preferable to marriage, that singleness is actually better than being married. And this is a surprising teaching for many, even in the church, because a lot of well-meaning Christians promote marriage very hard. And certainly marriage is a blessing, but as we will see, the Bible is clear that it is better to be single than it is to be married. So let's begin by looking at a passage from Matthew chapter 19 where Jesus teaches that those who can be single should be single. In Matthew chapter 19, verses 11 and 12, it reads, "But Jesus said to them, 'Not everyone can accept this teaching, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let anyone accept this who can.'" So when Jesus talks about eunuchs, he's talking about people who do not get married. And he says some people are born that way, other people have things happen to them that make them that way, and then some people choose to stay single for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus says anyone who can accept this should accept it. Now, personally, I knew that I was not one of the people who could accept this teaching because I had been interested in girls since I was a teenager. But I've met many people who are simply not attracted to the opposite gender. And it's these people who Jesus is talking to. He's saying that it is okay to be single, that in fact it's preferable to be single, because in chapter 22, beginning at verse 30, Jesus says, "For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven." So people who live lives of singleness are already closer to the life that we will experience in the resurrection. Remember, the resurrection is when everything will be made perfect. And in that perfection, there is singleness. So people who live single now are closer to that state of perfection than anyone else. And Jesus himself modeled that perfection in his own life because he remained single. So if you live a life of singleness, you are actually closer to living like Jesus than people who get married. So be encouraged that singleness is a beautiful thing. It's a high honor. Paul likewise echoes this message. He says that singleness is preferable to marriage because it allows you to focus completely on God. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7, beginning at the 32nd verse, Paul writes, "I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the affairs of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about the affairs of the world, how to please his wife. And his interests are divided. And the unmarried woman and the virgin are anxious about the affairs of the Lord, so that they may be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about the affairs of the world, how to please her husband. I say this for your own benefit, not to put any restraint upon you, but to promote good order and unhindered devotion to the Lord." So Paul is saying that singleness is preferable because it allows you to focus more fully on God. And as a married man, I can say Paul is completely correct. When I make a decision, no matter what it is, related to ministry or not, I always have to take my wife into consideration. If I were single, I would have more freedom to just go wherever I felt the Spirit was calling. But now I always have to check with my wife to see if the Spirit is also leading her in that direction, because husband and wife, we are one flesh, we are one unit, and we need to make decisions together. Granted, yes, as the husband, I have headship over the relationship, but that means I still have to love my wife and treat her as her opinions are valuable. If I was single, I wouldn't have to worry about any of this. I could just go wherever I felt led. So Paul is saying that singleness is preferable to marriage. In fact, he straight up says that in verse 38. In 1 Corinthians 7:38, he says, "So then, he who marries his fiancée does well, and he who refrains from marriage will do better." So singleness is better than marriage. And again, this is a shocking teaching even for other Christians, but it's right there in the Bible. It is clear that singleness is the call that is higher, that is the call that is more perfect. It's the call that is more like the resurrection life will be. So if you're somebody who's just never been interested in dating, don't let the world dissuade you. Don't let them try and make you feel bad about that. I want you to know that the Bible affirms a life of singleness, that it is a beautiful thing. And if that's something that you can accept, that you should accept it. And likewise, for those of you who don't feel this call, there's nothing wrong with that either. Both Paul and Jesus say that this is only for some people. It's not meant to be for everyone. I knew that this kind of call was not for me, and you'll discover in your own life if it's for you. Now, if you're still unsure about where you stand on this, and many of you might be because of your age, be constant in prayer and ask God to reveal to you what kind of life He wants you to have. And if you're really confused about your identity and you need someone to talk to you, I encourage you to reach out to Pastor Christopher or I, and we would love to walk with you through this process of discerning what kind of life God has for you. I hope this video was encouraging to you and affirms that singleness is a beautiful thing. And I'll see you in the next video.